Cambly learners, my name is Maxine and I'm a tutor on Cambly. In today's lesson, you'll be learning about advice and advise. And at the end of the lesson, you'll know when and how to use the two words. So, what is the difference between the advice and advise? Firstly, let's look at the two words. Advice is spelled A-D-V-I-C-E. And advise is spelled A-D-V-I-S-E. The difference here being the C and the S. Secondly, the pronunciation of the two words is a little bit different. With advice, the C is pronounced as an S. Advice. And with advise, the S is pronounced as a Z. Advise. And lastly, advice is a noun, an uncountable noun, which means that it cannot be counted. To explain more, you cannot have an advice or many advices. Advise is a verb. It is something that you can do, to advise. So, those are the differences between the two words. Next up, I'll define advice and advise for an even better understanding. The definition of advice is an opinion or recommendation which is offered as a guide to an action. For example, she gave me some advice based on her experience. Thank you for your advice. It is always welcome. The definition of advise is to suggest or give information to someone. It is used to give someone advice. For example, I would advise you to bring a raincoat. Your supervisor can advise you on what action to take. Here are some helpful little extras when using advice or advise. As I mentioned earlier, advice is an uncountable noun. So, for us to pluralize it, we can use the following phrases. A word of advice, two pieces of advice, or some advice. Here are some examples. Let me give you a word of advice. Stay away from the smoked salmon. He gave me two pieces of sound advice. Over here, sound advice means good advice. I would like to offer you some advice. When using advise in an email asking for advice, you would usually use the word advise at the end of the email. You would use advise if there was a problem or when you're asking a question, and you would end off the email with please advise. Advise can also be used when you're needing an answer to a specific request. For example, please advise on the current weather situation in Prague. All right, so in this video, we have covered the differences between advice and advise, the definitions of the two words with examples, and some helpful ways to use the two words in sentences and or in an email. I hope that you have all enjoyed the video just as much as I have, and that it adds so much value to your English learning journey. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Cambly, Cambly gives you instant access to friendly native English speakers like me. You can take English lessons anytime, anywhere, from your phone or from your computer. Schedule your next lesson with me using the link below. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. Goodbye.